As Nigerians prepare to usher in the new year, many will be preoccupied with what 2022 will have in store for them. From the critical decisions that must be taken to accelerate economic activities to the choice of political leaders, particularly the presidential candidates by the political parties for the 2023 elections, the year 2022 is expected to chart the course of Nigeria's trajectory on all fronts. While joining us now to discuss the country's socioeconomic and political outlook in 2022 is Professor Pat Utomi. Utomi is a professor of political economy, management expert, fellow of the Institute of Management Consultants of Nigeria, and a former presidential candidate. He's also the founder of Center for Value in Leadership and the political party African Democratic Congress. Good morning, Professor Utomi, and thank you for joining us all the way from Michigan in the USA. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. It's a pleasure.
So I'll start nice and general. A lot is being made of 2022 into 2023 being a make or break period for Nigeria, that if we don't get it right this time, we never will. Do you agree with that? And if so, why?
Absolutely, I do agree with that. You know, when we talk about the challenges that we have as a country, sometimes we either play the ostrich or show that we have not followed trends. Now, almost all the troubles we have today were anticipated, were predicted by people who simply followed trends. And I could tell you, and I'm not saying I could, go back and read everything I wrote 20 years ago. I literally predicted everything that's happening in Nigeria today. And I can tell you without batting an eyelid, just from looking at trends, that if we don't get 2022 right, there won't be Nigeria 5 years from now. That's how bad or how important 2022 is. It's a make or break year for Nigeria. What are the trends? What are the things that suggest this? Look, Nigeria has been in a downward spiral for a long time. And we play this game about, which big man should be in charge. Because if this big man is in charge rather than that big man, maybe things will be better. I've been fortunate to play very close. Almost all the big men that have shuffled from one to the other are people I know personally and I've spent hours discussing with. It's clear to me now that the problem is not this big man or that big man. The problem is systemic, fundamentally anti-progress because of the narcissism of the political class and very, very importantly, because we don't have political parties in Nigeria. So there isn't a systematic look at the problems of our country and a clear understanding of the way forward. So you get this shuffling around. Doesn't matter what the title the person brings to the table. It is a systemic problem. It is not because this guy is evil or that fellow is nice. Unless we completely overhaul the system, Nigeria is just going to, look, I'll give you a clear example. The United States government, every 5 years, does a review of the state of the world for its own strategic purposes. Now, these 5-year reviews are called global trends reviews. How do they do this? They generally get, think tanks around the world to look at different regions of the world. Then they get their intelligence services to also put together reports. Then they get experts to pull this together. Then they bring together global thought leaders to reflect on these if you will, evidence-based projections from the experts. When they finished the one of the year 2000, they more or less suggested that within 15 years, if nothing changed in a fundamental way in Nigeria, Nigeria was either going to be a failing or a failed state. Now, our people, our leaders, National Assembly people, who could not even read basic English, took that to be that the United States said Nigeria would have broken up. I mean, that was not what the report said. We just failed to be able to read simple, basic documents. By 2015, Nigeria was clearly a failing state. If you take the failed state index, you will see where Nigeria ranked and all of that. So that report was accurate. In the same way, and I can tell you that I was one of the global thought leaders invited to one of the reviews of the one of 2005. And a statement from that review, which hurt me very badly, in that group that I went to review was a couple of former prime ministers, European prime ministers, because this took place in Sweden. A very well-known global leader, former UN, because I can't mention names because these are Chatham House rules meetings, basically said at that meeting that Nigeria had lost its strategic relevance in the world, that 30 years before, no power in the world would look at entering anywhere in Africa without pausing and asking, how would Nigeria respond? He said, but today, and this was about 2000 and, I don't know, 3 or 4, but today, nobody thinks seriously about entering Nigeria's backyard. It was a very hurting statement, but it was the reality of the evolution of our country's trajectory. And so all this evidence lead us to a certain clarity that if nothing extraordinary, that is system review is done in 2022, Nigeria will be gone before the next round of elections in 2027. That is very clear to me. Not from any magic, but from just reading trends, the way all of the things that have happened to Nigeria. I mean, read what I wrote about security in Nigeria in 2021. I actually founded a group called NUTRA, Nigerians United to Resist Anarchy, because I saw clearly, especially after reading people like Robert Kaplan in his book, The Coming Anarchy, he went as far as predicting that ethnic cleavages, religious cleavages, economic cleavages would bring Nigeria to a boiling point from which the whole of West Africa could descend into anarchy. He even suggested that a city in Nigeria called Jos could be the point from which this unraveling takes place. He turned out to be almost a prophet, but he was not prophesying. He was simply just looking at trends. And so my desperate plea to fellow compatriots in Nigeria is we must completely turn this system over for the sake of our children and grandchildren, because if we don't, I doubt that there will be a Nigeria in 2027.
Thank you so much, Prof. But we're stuck with this same political class, albeit that has always revolved in this country.
Why should we be stuck with them?
No,
why must we be stuck with them?
Let me finish my point, Prof. We're stuck with this political class, albeit that has always revolved and oscillated around this nation since way back even the 70s or 80s, you know, and that has always been the case. So you asked me, why should we be stuck with them? I'd ask you in return, show me the alternatives at this point in time. Show me the alternative for 2023.
That is precisely the point. You see, one of the successes of this political class is that they have created a myth in the consciousness of the Nigerian that there is no alternative to them. Let us take voting patterns, for example. Lagos, the great Lagos. How many people voted for the man who is governor there today? Not up to 1 million people. And fewer people, even with the growth rate in our population, voted for the incumbent as voted for the one before him. What is clear is that the problem is the Nigerian people. The Nigerian people have given up on our democracy, and they say, let them do whatever they like. God will get them. And because of it, they are killing their country. All that it will take to solve this problem is for the people I call the complicit middle to realize that with these fellows, our country is close to its end. and to wake up and say, look, hey, let's get all these people who have refused to vote in the past. Let's get all these professors and managers who think that if they can hide in their comfort zone, and if the road is bad, find some way of buying an SUV, to realize that, the game is up. Nigeria would turn dramatically. This happened in several places in the course of human history that I am confident it can happen in Nigeria. Look, I'm currently writing a book doing some comparative analysis of how this has happened in different countries. I tell the story often of how it happened in Brazil, and a personal encounter with Enrique Fernando Cardoso. I talk about the experience of course, Rwanda in a certain way and elsewhere. And it is the easiest thing. Even the people who we call this terrible political class, they are citizens. They care about their country. But they are victims of a system they've fallen into. And if enlightenment can bring them to a realization that because of them, their country is about to be toast, perhaps even they can collaborate in changing these systems. A critical part of it is the electoral process. You know, I've repeatedly, in talking about the electoral process, I made the point that the world kind of laughs at us when they look at our electoral process. They see it as a farce. I give the example of just the last election, being at a reception. I can mention at the British Deputy High Commissioner's residence, and the people I can mention, and they can corroborate what I'm saying. And Oscar Onyema, who was president of CEO at the stock exchange at the time, was chatting with some senior diplomat, and the diplomat described the 2019 election as a complete farce. And he says, wait a minute, you people endorsed it. And he looked at him and says, are we the ones who will tell you that you have made a fool of yourselves in the election? And I was listening. I was not talking with them. I was talking in some other group. But I listened, and Oscar said to him, but, you know, you people can't say that this. And he says, hey, that's your problem. We are not the ones who will go and tell you that what you had was not election. So, the naked point is that we need to rebuild the electoral process. I've listened to some commentary about the list sent to INEC, to Senate, about INEC constitution. It doesn't look credible, doesn't look like politicians are looking beyond who they can use to manipulate the elections.
Prof, if I may, I
yes.
want to interject here. Hold your thoughts on the electoral amendment, and we'll take a short break and we'll be right back with you. Thank you. Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. We're still with Professor Pat Utomi. Prof, before we went on the break, you had started addressing the all-important issue of electoral reform. Do go ahead, sir.
Okay. Well, you know, the way that political leaders affect history is their ability to build a certain cachet of legitimacy. The most critical ingredient in legitimacy is the acceptance that the agency function, that the people who are representing a people are acting on their behalf and are accountable to them. And the starting point is to make sure that those who emerge from an election are really those who were voted for, or that the people felt the election process was worth participating in, and that their endorsement of one candidate to another produce somebody that they can control because they are the sovereign, not the elected persons. Now, we know that this is not the case in our country, and the evidence is all over the place. One of the things that I'm hoping we will do, and a group of us, politicians, civil society, trying to work together, are saying that this year we will develop a certain basic set of questions about what kind of leader do you want? How should your leaders act? Let the people themselves determine what kind of leaders they want, how they want this. And if they determine that. Whatever it is they determine as what they want. We will use technology to ask them the question, now these particular people who are representing you, in whatever capacity, legislators, governors, president himself, do they resemble this thing that you have said is what you consider leadership at any level, local government? If they say no, then we'll say vote whether INEC wants it or not. Use technology from your phone. If a preponderance of the people continuously respond that these persons don't meet their bill, then they must begin a process of recalling those people. And that will begin to instill in our process an understanding that you don't just go and get elected, or quote unquote, by either vote rigging, vote buying, and the various things that people use to get to office in Nigeria, because there'll be pressure to account. So we're expecting that 2022 will be a year of massive recalls of political actors in our country. And we will build the capacity to show that this is credible talk of the people. That the politicians fight the will of the people coming out of these simple technology-enabled real numbers about what the people feel. The second thing that needs to be done, and a number of us are working together to doing this, is we'll put together credible teams of Nigerians on almost every aspect of governmental life, so that these teams, whether you call them a shadow government or whatever, will on a continuing basis point to what government is doing and cannot achieve the results, and show the alternative that can work, not theory, but practical ones. Now, when Emmanuel Ifeni was reviewing the papers, and I think, Rufai, even you kicked in about debt levels and all of this, anytime I hear these things, I am really disrupted, because the fundamental problem is not tax more or this or that. Yes, it's true that we don't pay enough taxes in our country, no question about that. But where we are now, if you then try to tax those who can invest, you further depress things. So there's a matter of sequencing and timing in all of this. Of course, those who have so much money without producing anything should be gone after, and as much gotten from them from taxes, because they're not contributing to production. But the heart of Nigeria's challenge right now is, how do we boost production? How do we build the value chains, as the increased productivity comes? But very, very importantly, how do we creatively finance our economy? Even if we increase collections from all these people, we're not going to be able to drive all the infrastructure we say we need to drive up. We're not going to be able to raise the kind of capital we need to regenerate the economy. And so we must look at how truly creative markets can generate what is nicely referred to today as the prosperity paradox, where markets of their own generate infrastructure. But how will markets work when the political class lacks credibility? Look, 2 or so years ago, Forbes magazine wrote an article that called Nigeria Africa's money-losing machine. They thought any right-thinking person would not want to invest in Nigeria. Why is this? Because of regulatory risk. The fact that government decisions are more likely to cause you trouble in Nigeria than market risks. So, a retooling of the political class, of the kind of people we appoint to positions, and all of this is fundamental to changing these possibilities. If there is a political group or decision-making group the world considers more reasonable, understanding what they are doing, not driven by just collecting rent and self-love, but truly want to serve the people, the world will immediately change its orientation, and there is capital in the world, plenty of capital available. Look, the French economist Thomas Piketty will tell you that there has never been as much capital available in human history as there is today, and that globalization has led to this huge concentration of capital. The problem, he argues, is that the capital is in a few hands. How do those few hands deploy this capital? It's a matter of how we are perceived. If we can't get basic discipline in the way that we treat people who come to our country, whether it's at the customs end, immigration end, if we can't change a culture to a culture of service and a culture of integrity, we're not going to get the capital that can drive all of these things up. We're going to be looking for who to tax, who to get from, and we're just in a vicious downward spiral. So the fundamental nature of the change that must take place in 2022 is existential for Nigeria. And it's about sweeping out this current political class. If you don't, the prospects for Nigeria are extremely dim. When Nigerians realize that we're dealing with an existential crisis, we will know that it is not about big men, it's about big ideas. The ideas that the world will respect, the integrity that the world will see as worth betting on, and everything will reverse very quickly for Nigeria.
Right.
So this is like, okay.
I want to take you back to something you said earlier in this conversation. You said we don't have political parties in Nigeria. Would you care to expand on that? And in a previous conversation on this show, you made the point about young people being really left out of the political process. And even earlier than that, you talked about how young people must run the current crop of politicians out of the country, indeed, before they run us out of existence. I'd like you to really address those points this morning.
Okay. You know, political parties are about developing a certain set of ideas about how the world should be structured. No Nigerian political party that I know of, the so-called dominant two, have any clearly structured set of ideas about how our country should be organized and a position on every issue. Even President Shehu Shagari had a clearer idea, much clearer idea about how housing can drive economic growth, expansion, and opportunities. We don't see it today. This is because the political parties have not. I sat down, I was one of those who wrote one of those things. How have they been internalized? We said, let us get all those who will come into this party to go through a process of being socialized into the values, the policy base of the party. Nobody was interested because for them, most of the people, I call them entrepreneurs of power. A party is just a way to get to a position and then to have state capture and to use power to advance self-interest. That's what political parties are, machine politics in Nigeria. Because the political parties do not have things they believe in, and their people are not socialized into believing in those, they're not able to articulate anything. So you can go from APC to PDP in the morning, back to APC in the night, the following week, back to where you started from, because none of these parties represent a view of the world that they like to see structured. So we have that fundamental problem. And if we had a party that had ideas, they would control an executive that is going off of the track of the party planks. But we don't have that. So, young people, look, Nigeria is a very, very young country. We are pursuing a demographic dividend from the youth bulge we have. One of two things will happen to us. If we don't invest enough in the education, in the health of those young people, they will become a time bomb that will drive us on the road to Somalia, that will take us down that path to anarchy. If we invest properly in these young people, who are very bright from my experience in interacting with them, much brighter than many of us who like to think we were smart, when we were their age. But we put them down. We say they are lazy, which is nonsense. They are not lazy, because I interact with them every day. We just have failed to give them opportunities. If we therefore do right with them, and in a government of inclusion, this majority of the people should be, yes, guided into positions where they begin to express their passions and their energies. I mean, look at what Nigerian boys and girls are doing with fintech. And, not just in the tech area, but in the Nollywood entertainment spectrum and all of that, we properly provide a frame. They will produce Nigeria's way out of this challenge that we have today. But you see, because power is about capture and exclusion, those who have captured power have excluded the majority of the Nigerian people who are its productive young. And because of it, the energies of those young people are channeled into wrong things.
Okay.
And then they accuse them of being lazy. That is the wrong thing to do.
Okay, Prof. So two things. Number one, I think it was the same Thomas Piketty you were quoting that was telling the story of Sweden in his book, Capital in the 21st Century, and told the story of social mobility in Sweden. How Sweden used to be in the 1900s, used to be one of the most unequal society in the world. But now, Sweden's Gini coefficient is a whole lot better, and it's a bastion of equality through its systems. I want to take that story and translate it to Nigeria today. Do you think we can do all of these great things you've talked about, social mobility and the likes, with the kind of constitution we have?
We've got to completely tear up our constitution. It's not working. However, in my opinion, when we talk about things like restructuring, I think we're starting a little further down the line. The first restructuring is the individual, the mindset of the Nigerian. We've got to begin from there. The values of the Nigerian. We have to restructure that. Because if you draw some new maps, get some decentralization of authority here and there, and this current mindset in Nigeria persists, it will get you nowhere. So the beginning of restructuring is the Nigerian value system. The Nigerian person being reprogrammed, even just basic patriotism that we have lost. The dignity of the human person being central to how we live. Because all this violence everywhere, yes, it's sometimes a push thing that comes from bad policies that have, well, taken opportunities away from the people, but also there is a certain set of values that have been lost in the collapse of culture in Nigeria. And values shape human progress. So we've got to begin to work on this. And people are talking about, what do you restructure? One of the first and most important things we need to do is set up a super agency of government that recognizes that culture shapes human progress. We set up a national orientation movement. It's a joke of propaganda. This is beyond propaganda. Even the company, the big study that was done in the 90s by Jim Collins and Jerry Porras proved that of everything, the thing that most drove corporate success was corporate culture. And this is why institutional strategy is critical today to any company. In the same way for a nation, unless your values can be properly aligned, articulated, and people live it, you are not going to make too much progress. So amongst the most important interventions for now, and it's not a tell them what to do, while we are doing that thing. No. The leaders will leave that completely. One of my simple examples of why the Nigerian government is not serious as it's operating is that we've come to a position where everything is falling down. It's coming down. We're trying to tax this, find money there. Look at how government officials live. Look at their motorcades. Look at how presidential jets are used as kabu-kabu. Just look at that, and you will see a lack of seriousness in whether I want to serve the people. So it's about me, myself, and I, a government of politicians, by politicians, for politicians. They don't connect to the Nigerian people. This has to change. that kind of orientation. I've given the example in our own history of General Obasanjo as head of state. We get a downturn in oil revenues, and he says it's low profile. Head of state, we show 504. Everybody down the line follows. How much do we spend on executive travel in Nigeria, from civil servants to politicians? How much in a country where people can't eat? It is unacceptable. We cannot build a country like that. So when we begin first by dealing with the culture challenge, and then we get clear strategy. Look, Nigeria could become Africa's new factory. Sorry, not Africa, the world's new factory. As China moves on, it can be a Nigeria that flows in. But you're not going to do it the way we are operating. Where's the strategy? Where's our national strategy on manufacturing? How are we building on our latent comparative advantage? It's like some people are not thinking, whereas there are so many people. I mean, my friend, old colleague, Ayo Teriba, never gives up. Dr. Teriba makes this point about how countries are financing their development today through how their national asset register is positioned and investment flows into those assets become the drivers. I don't see any creative thinking. If you go back to capital, to even Hernando de Soto and the mystery of capital, past what Piketty and Co are talking to, and all of those things, you will see that there is no creativity in how Nigeria is governed today.
None
and this
whatsoever.
is because there's a failure.
If I may come in here, you really raised that very important point of profligacy, you know, that we see with governance when the population is so immiserated. I also have to raise, before we leave, I need you to touch on the security crisis that we're facing in this country.
It is related also, you know, I mean, like I said, and I give a simple example of a conversation that I had about 20 years ago with the then Namasanin Kanu, the late Elijah Maitama Sule. I was visiting Kanu and I went to visit him, as I always did whenever I went to Kanu. And we were discussing national issues. I said to him, Namasani, you know, I look at the growing Almajiri situation. You know, when you are 9 years old and you have to go and beg food to eat, in the night you end up sleeping under a tree. Maybe you can manage it. When you are 40 years old, nobody will give you food begging. You are very likely to carry a gun and go after people. That's what has happened. There's just been a multiplication of this, and sometimes the politicians themselves have further fueled it in their greed and their use of these people as cannon fodder for their ambitions. They've given them guns and all kinds of things. And so the coming anarchy that was predicted is with us. We need new thinking to solve that problem. Any continuation of the old ways, oh, this man is a general, he can use it, it's not going to get us anywhere. The starting point is political. It is a recognition that those people are people and they are of us, and that we need to deal fairly with them. And we create initiatives that rehumanize them. We will not solve the problem of security. It will just continue to expand and to blow up. We need a political class that acts like it's about the people, sacrifices for the advance of the common good of all. Unless we can get that kind of class in place, I'm sorry, Nigeria is toast, and we don't want it to be toast. All patriots must realize that 2022 must be the year of the rise of a patriot. It must be the year when those who live in their so-called comfort zones, the complicit middle, as I call them, recognize that unless they wake up, smell the coffee, they won't have a country. It's not enough to want to run to Canada because we can fix this. Brazil fixed theirs. Singapore fixed theirs. And I can go on and on about those who have fixed theirs. Even Rwanda, as small as it is and all of that, Paul Kagame becomes a hero. It's part of his own challenges, but notwithstanding, but Nigeria can. It just needs for a serious-minded group of Nigerians to say this is not about big men.
Thank you
it's
so
about
much,
big
sir.
ideas
Thank you so
that
much.
can lift up people.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure. I'm glad I could join you.
Pleasure to talk to you. And I think the word I'm getting for you is we can really fix this, and we can do it. Yes, we can.
Absolutely.
We can fix Nigeria. Thank you so much.